Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little darker. Picture this, the clang of metal, the buzz of a restless crowd, and the heavy, suffocating silence that falls just before the axe drops. Tonight, we're stepping into a world few would envy, a world of blood, ritual, and very awkward family dinners. Because we're going to explore what happens if you were born a medieval executioner. Spoiler, you probably won't get invited to many weddings. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your local time and where you're tuning in from, too. I love seeing how far these sleepy journeys travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born in a small village on the edge of a forest, somewhere in the shadow of a crumbling castle. Not that you know any different, you come into the world screaming like every other baby, though some say the wind outside howled a little louder that night. Maybe it's just gossip, maybe it's foreshadowing. Your father is an executioner. That's not a profession, it's a legacy. The title sticks to your family like smoke on old wool. You grow up in a house slightly outside the village, not too close to the church, not too far from the gallows. Your neighbors nod politely but won't let their children play with you. And when your mother goes to market, the baker puts her bread down with tongs. Historians still argue whether executioners were ostracized out of superstition or if it was more about the practical matter of who wants to share lunch with someone who beheads people. Either way, you learn early that silence is your armor. You stop asking why other children flinch. You stop waving hello. Your chores aren't like the other kids either. While they're learning to milk goats or spin wool, you're oiling blades. Your father doesn't explain much. He just shows you how to sharpen a sword until it sings, and teaches you how to fold the leather around your hands so the blood won't soak in. And he teaches you to never, ever look away. You dishonor them if you flinch, he says, even the worst of them. There's a ritual to everything. When your father prepares for a job, he washes with a particular soap made from ash and herbs. He prays. He sits silently for hours. Once, you ask him if it's hard. He doesn't answer, but that night you hear him weeping quietly behind the woodpile. By the time you're 10, you know the sounds of death better than lullabies. You know the difference between someone who dies quick and someone who doesn't. You know what it smells like when a crowd holds its breath. And you know the names people call your family behind closed doors: butcher's kin, death breeder, head, taker's whelp. Quirky fact, in some medieval towns, executioners had to wear special clothing or masks not for ceremony, but so people could avoid making eye contact, as if anonymity made the job cleaner. One winter, your father falls ill. A fever burns through him like fire on dry straw, and just like that, you're no longer just the executioner's child, you're the executioner. Not officially, of course, but when the bailiff comes knocking, he doesn't ask how old you are. He just says there's a thief hanging at dawn, and the town can't wait. You don't sleep that night. Your hands shake as you touch the axe. It's too heavy, too cold, but you carry it anyway. You walk through snow that crunches like bones. The platform is slick with frost and fear. The condemned man looks younger than your father. You lift the axe. You aim. You miss. Historians still argue whether medieval executioners practiced or if they learned on the job. Either way, you learn quickly. One swing, clean and swift, earns mercy. More than that, well, even the crows avert their eyes. Afterwards, you vomit behind the chapel. No one comforts you. No one thanks you. But the bailiff nods once and says, "The town's work is done." And just like that, you're part of the machine, a cog with blood on its teeth. You return home to find your father's bed empty, not because he died, because he left. The note is short. Don't be like me. But it's too late. You already are. You're 7 when you first see the axe, not the little ones your mother uses in the kitchen. This one is taller than you are, and black with rust. It hangs on the wall above the town records, beside a coil of thick rope and a wooden block that smells faintly of blood, even after the rain. Your father doesn't talk about the axe. He doesn't talk much at all. He just sharpens. Other boys learn their father's trades: baking, carpentry, maybe smithing if they're lucky. You learn silence. You learn the exact pressure it takes to slice through a pig's spine with one swing. You learn how to keep your hands steady even when your stomach doesn't want to be. By 12, you've stopped flinching at screams. Not because you're cruel, it's just noise now, like wind, like geese. Sometimes people scream when they're scared. Sometimes they scream when they deserve to. You're not paid to judge which it is, only to make sure they don't scream long. In town, you are not quite outcast, not quite welcome. People don't spit at you, but they don't look you in the eye either. They whisper more than they speak. You hear them sometimes, behind walls or through market stalls. That's the boy, the one who'll take over. Your friends thin out by 15. They don't want to spar anymore. They don't want to share bread. You once made a girl laugh by balancing a turnip on your head. Now she crosses the street when she sees you. You stop trying. You get very good at being alone. Historians still argue whether executioners were feared for superstition, for their perceived closeness to death, or because they were reminders of justice that could come for anyone. Maybe all three. You feel like a walking warning sign. When your father dies quietly, surprisingly, no one cries but you. Not even your mother. She simply hands you the black cloth that marks your role. It still smells like his sweat. You don't wash it. You perform your first execution at 18. It's a thief. Small man. Maybe 40. He has a limp and teeth that are too white. He makes a joke as they drag him up. Something about you being too young to shave. People laugh, even you, but your hand doesn't shake. The axe feels heavier than you expected. Not physically, spiritually. It's like lifting someone else's sins. Your swing is clean. The body twitches the way your father said it would. You wait for some feeling to strike you: guilt, regret, something cinematic. Instead, you feel cold and hungry. There's bread afterward. The town gives it to you. Compensation, they say. You eat it alone. Quirky tidbit. Some towns believed executioners should never sleep under the same roof 2 nights in a row. You think about that often. How odd it would be to carry your burden house to house, never allowed to settle. You develop habits to keep your hands strong carving wood, stretching rope, lifting stones. Your body becomes compact and quiet. You walk like a cat, not because you want to, but because you must. You learn where blood flows fastest and where bones are weakest. You learn how to look at a man and know how long it will take him to die. The worst part, oddly, is the waiting. You stand beside the scaffold sometimes for hours, surrounded by murmurs, stares, the occasional insult. You're a spectacle, but not one people cheer. More like a storm on the horizon. They can't look away. Children dare each other to touch your robe. One does. You pretend not to notice. He screams anyway and runs. His mother slaps him hard enough that you wince. You try to marry once. The girl is kind, not afraid of you. Her father is a butcher, so maybe that helps. But when the banns are read, the priest flinches. The church is half empty. She leaves a month later. No explanation. Just gone. Your mother dies during winter. You bury her with your own hands. No one offers to help. You don't ask. You sing something at the grave, but your voice breaks. It's not the cold. You start dreaming strange dreams. Not nightmares, Just images rows of heads that blink, a river of axes, your father smiling with no mouth. You stop sleeping much. Sometimes, though, you do good. A lord once sends you to carry out a sentence against a rival's cousin. You know it's political. Everyone does. The man's only crime is being related to the wrong person. You delay the execution. Claim the axe head cracked. It didn't. But by the time they sort it, the lord changes his mind. The cousin lives. You don't tell anyone, but you feel lighter for a week. Some say executioners are cursed, that they never pass peacefully. You think that's superstition? Until your hand starts shaking. Just sometimes. Just enough to worry you. You take longer sharpening now. Not to make the blade keener, just to buy time. You wonder who will take your place. Who will learn to carry the silence? The crowd has gathered, not because it wants to, but because it must. There's a summoning bell that clangs in the center of town, and when it rings, people shuffle out of their homes like moths caught in a draft. You're among them. Your feet drag slightly from fatigue, from worry, from not knowing what new horror the day will serve. No one speaks. The silence is brittle. Your mother's hand is firm on your shoulder. You are not a child, not anymore, but she grips you like one, like she still believes she can protect you, even now. The center square is muddied with straw and ash. The platform creaks under the weight of something new. A wooden post, freshly installed, there's rope hanging from it, and beside it, a wooden chair. Too plain to be ceremonial, too central to be ignored. The bailiff reads a proclamation. He's got a thin voice for someone who's always shouting. By the order of the justices and by witness of the village reeve, a soul stands accused of consorting with foul spirits. His words float off into the wind. People hear them, but they don't really listen. You certainly don't. You're watching the chair. Then you hear your family name, loud, clear, you blink. Someone has pointed, not at you, but near you. Your cousin, the one who helped you gather herbs last month, the one who told you not to pick from the west slope because the roots tasted bitter. She's pale now. Her eyes dart from side to side like a cornered animal. You realize, with sudden and sharp clarity, that she isn't being accused. She's testifying against you. This is how it begins. Historians still argue whether witch trials were truly about faith, fear, or a convenient way to settle old grudges. In this moment, you lean toward the grudge theory. Your cousin avoids your gaze. She doesn't say your name directly, but the implication is clear. You once said something strange. You once knew the weather before it came. You once gave her something for her cough, and it worked. The reeve steps forward, a stocky man with hands that belong in dirt, not on documents. He calls you by name. You are summoned. You want to protest, but your throat is dry. Your mother starts to say something, but you press her hand. Number, let it happen. To fight it now is to make it worse. You step forward. The mud sucks at your shoes. Every eye finds you. Some widen in shock, others narrow in fear, but many just stay blank. Neutrality is the safest mask. The chair is not meant for comfort. It is meant to hold you long enough for questions. Questions that lead nowhere safe. You sit, not because you're ready, but because refusing is another kind of guilt. The bailiff steps closer. His breath smells of onions and power. Do you confess to summoning spirits to blight the barley field? You blink again. That's what this is about. The barley? It was blighted because of the endless rain, because the soil was tired, because the seasons are broken. But you also remember the village children laughing about your magic herb sack weeks ago. Maybe someone believed it. You shake your head. Number. A murmur rises from the crowd. Denial isn't innocence. It's defiance. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, Suspected witches were judged based on whether milk curdled in their presence. You remember this because someone behind you drops a clay pot and a sour smell follows. The reeve confers with the bailiff. Words are exchanged like coins. You know this game. The questions won't stop. They will evolve. If they can't prove you summoned a storm, they'll say you dreamed one. If they can't accuse you of poisons, they'll say you talk to frogs too sweetly. A woman cries out. She's not looking at you, she's looking at her own child, who starts to scream. That's when the fear starts to ripple, not toward you, but away, as if you're a sickness. A breach in the dam. The reeve turns back. Do you deny touching the bones of the dead? Another head shake, another shiver of tension. You glance toward the church. The priest has not come out. Not yet. That's a bad sign. It means the village has decided to handle this inwardly. Someone steps forward from the crowd, a man with a crooked leg and a past grudge. He claims you made his goats fall ill. Another says his dreams turned black after passing you on the path. You want to laugh. You want to scream. But you stay still. The reeve nods to the bailiff. Bind them. Rope around your wrists. Not tight. Not yet. This is the kind of binding that says, we're giving you a chance to speak, but if you don't say what we want to hear. The platform feels colder now. You notice the birds have stopped singing. And for the first time, truly, you wonder if you will survive this. Not just with your body, but with anything inside you intact. You sharpen your knife with deliberate care, not because the blade is dull, but because dull tools lead to sloppy work, and sloppy work leads to screams. Screams draw crowds. Crowds draw questions. And questions, in your profession, are best left unasked. You're not a butcher, though it might look that way. You're the town's executioner. And today, like every day, you wake before dawn, when the world is still grey, and dreams haven't yet remembered themselves. Outside, the town begins to stir. Merchants crack open their shutters. Bakers feed their coals. But you remain where you are, sitting in the low stone annex that was built for you, and only you just outside the town's western gate. Not quite exile, but certainly not inclusion. Executioners don't live among the living. Not really. The cart arrives around mid-morning. It's pulled by a slow-moving mule and driven by a boy who doesn't make eye contact. That's fine. You don't speak to him either. He hops down, opens the back of the cart, and then quickly walks away, eyes fixed on the dirt. Inside the cart is the body. Not a corpse yet, but a body in waiting. A thief, they say. Or maybe a deserter. Or a man who spoke the wrong words in the wrong room. You've stopped asking. You check the warrant. It's damp around the edges and poorly written, but it's official. A rough wax seal, barely holding. It tells you everything you need to know. Where, when, and how. You memorize it, then toss the parchment into the fire. The scaffold's been built. It always is. There are men whose jobs involve building, dismantling, and rebuilding platforms strong enough to carry death. You nod at them. They do not nod back. You climb the steps and walk the platform, testing the grain beneath your boots, the slack of the rope, the creak of the beam. You count the steps down from the trapdoor. A good hang is all about the math too short, and you get a strangling. Too long, and you get a snap with mess. You aim for clean. It's the only kindness left. By noon, the town square is full. Not of mourners, of course, but of watchers. They come with bread, with apples, with children on shoulders. They do not jeer. That would make them participants. They do not cry. That would make them human. Instead, they do what they've always done. They consume the spectacle and then carry on with their lives, slightly lighter for the relief that, today, it's not them. You escort the condemned yourself. That part is yours. The guards lead him to the edge of the square, then step back. You offer no words. You tie the hands. You adjust the noose. You check the knot again. He says nothing either. Most don't. Some cry, some pray, some spit, but most just go quiet, like a candle that has accepted its wick. There's no speech, no grand pronouncement, just the nod from the magistrate and the pull of the lever. The crowd leans forward. There's a snap, then silence, then a collective exhale. Your job is done. But you don't leave. Not yet. You check the body, confirm the end, remove the noose, help load it back into the cart. The boy returns, still not looking at you. He takes the reins and walks off toward the burial fields. You descend the platform alone. Your boots thump against the wood. You hear people murmuring, but you do not listen. You are the shadow at the edge of law, the necessary sin. And so, when the townsfolk pass you that evening because you walk through the marketplace like everyone else, they part like mist, not out of fear, not quite, but out of inherited ritual. As if their ancestors told them, the hand that brings death does not shake yours. And you accept it, because in your world, the only thing more dangerous than a man who fears death is one who administers it without flinching. The rain hasn't stopped in what feels like years. You wake up with the heavy weight of damp blankets pressing into your sides and the sluggish ache in your joints that only cold, hunger, and hopelessness can bring. Water trickles in thin streams between the thatch above, dripping rhythmically into a tin bowl near your mat plink. Plink, plink. The sound has become a lullaby and a curse. You've memorized its rhythm better than any prayer. Morning used to be a time of hope, a stretch of golden sun across wooden beams, the scent of barley or meat stew in someone's hearth. Now, dawn only brings the grey of low clouds and the pale outlines of skeletal trees. No smoke curls from chimneys, no rooster crows. Only the wind whistling through holes in your roof and the sharp scent of mildew and wet wool. When you step outside, the world is slush and silence. The footpaths are no longer paths but slow-moving rivulets of mud and manure, dragging leaves, twigs, and the occasional dead rat in their sluggish wake. The fields beyond your village, still submerged. No signs of the rye you planted, just brown water and broken fences. You pass the home where the cobbler used to live. He hasn't been seen in weeks. The shutters are drawn, and moss crawls up the doorframe like it's trying to reclaim the wood. You think about knocking. You don't. Nobody does anymore. There are houses like that scattered through the village, now quiet tombs, still wearing the masks of homes. In the square, a pair of barefoot boys kick a turnip back and forth, not because it's a toy, but because they're too stubborn to eat it yet. It's small, probably rotten in the center. One boy kicks too hard, and it splits open. The smell is enough to empty your stomach, and not because it's full. You remember the village feast 2 years ago. Salted lamb, honey cakes, women with ribbons in their hair, and men so drunk on cider they danced barefoot on frost. It might as well have been a dream. Those ribbons now bind up thinning hair. The cider barrels were sold long ago. Honey? Forgotten. Someone coughs behind you, that deep, rattling kind of cough that seems to shake loose something vital inside. You don't turn around. It's better not to know who it was. Familiar faces age fast in hunger. Even children look old when they're starving. You shuffle toward the church not for prayer, but because it's one of the last places with walls that keep out the wind. A woman sits by the entrance, legs stretched in front of her like she's forgotten how to stand. In her lap is a bundle of cloth. You don't ask what's inside. If it were food, she'd be hiding it. Inside, the priest mutters at the altar. His hands tremble as he lifts the cup. The wine has long been replaced with water, and the bread is just flour paste. Still, he pretends. Everyone does. Faith, like shoes, wears thin when you have to walk through misery. Quirky tidbit: someone swore they saw the baker roasting moss on a spit last week. You laughed when you heard it until you saw the man licking green paste off his fingers. Back outside, a breeze hits you, and you smell something foreign, not fresh but sharp, irony, bitter, familiar. You follow it across the muddy road toward the village edge, past the old well, now dry. A cluster of stones rises like a little altar. In their center, someone has carved a symbol, twisting knot, or a rune. You can't quite tell. Maybe it's an offering. Maybe it's a warning. Maybe it's just madness. Historians still argue whether the Great Famine began with climate, politics, or plague. They write about trade routes, taxation, and failed diplomacy. But in places like this, history isn't theory. It's a growling stomach. It's burying another neighbor. It's learning to chew boiled grass until your jaw cramps. Your hands are blistered. Not from work, you barely work anymore. There's no field to till, no flour to grind. Your skin splits because there's no fat left in your diet. Every task becomes a small battle. Even standing too long makes your knees tremble. You crouch beside the fire pit outside your hut, staring into last night's ashes. You tried boiling pine cones. Again, they still taste like bark. You toss one to the dog next door, but even he doesn't bite. He just stares, ribs showing beneath patchy fur. You wonder who will eat whom first. A child walks past, carrying something in a cloth. You catch a glimpse it, looks like a pigeon, or parts of one. Someone hisses at them from a doorway. Sharing is dangerous now. It attracts attention. And attention, in hunger, can be deadly. Your cousin once read a traveler's tale about people in the East who eat lotus roots and strange mushrooms. You all laughed then, but you'd sell your last shirt for even a boiled lotus root now. There's talk of a merchant wagon arriving soon, from the south, or maybe it already passed. No one's sure. News arrives slower than hunger. You sit on the fence that rings the commons, once painted white, now rotting. A splinter digs into your thigh, but you don't move. Pain means you're still alive. That counts for something. Maybe. By dusk, the rain has softened. Just a mist now. A boy begins to hum an old harvest song, slow and off-key. One by one, a few others join in. The sound is thin, cracked, like wind chimes missing half their pieces. But for a minute, it sounds like people, like before. You close your eyes, you let yourself believe that soon the skies will clear, the fields will sprout, the smell of barley bread will return. You know it's a lie. But it's the kind you need to keep breathing. The first thing you hear that morning isn't rain. It's the absence of it. No pattering on the roof. No soft percussion against wooden eaves. Just silence. Thick, eerie silence. You lie still for a moment, half afraid to believe it. Then, slowly, you push aside the damp blanket and rise. The chill is still in your bones, but something is different. You step outside and stare up into a pale grey sky. Clouded, yes, but not weeping. The earth under your feet is still sodden, but no new tears fall from the heavens. There should be relief, but relief is a luxury now. Instead, suspicion creeps in, because when things change, they usually get worse before they get better. You join the others in the square, or what used to be the square, now just a concave of mud with fewer faces every day. The church bell hasn't rung in weeks. The market stalls are long gone. What remains is a quiet gathering of gaunt figures wrapped in burlap and stubbornness. Someone says they saw the sun just a sliver of it yesterday evening. Another says their chickens laid for the first time in months. Rumors, hope, or both. But the murmurs grow louder. Maybe, just maybe, the famine is turning. Maybe the earth has finished drowning and is ready to feed again. Historians still argue whether this pause in the rain marked the beginning of the end or just a cruel intermission. Records suggest some villages celebrated prematurely. They plowed too early, planted too shallow, trusted too easily. Crops failed again, and spirits broke harder the second time. But your village is cautious. You've learned. You don't till the field at the first dry breeze. Instead, you gather to decide, not by decree, but with aching consensus. What do you plant? Who still has seed left? Who will risk their hoarded barley in soil that's betrayed you before? An old woman, nobody remembers her name, but everyone listens when she speaks claims to remember a famine like this once in her childhood. Says her mother survived it with acorns and moss bread. She offers a recipe none of you have heard before. It involves soaking the acorns in lye for 3 days. You write it down, not because you have acorns, but because you might. Quirky tidbit. One man insists that speaking ill of the rain brings it back. He whispers now, never curses. Once, when a boy laughed at the idea and called the rain names, it stormed the next morning. The boy hasn't spoken since. You're chosen to go to the next village. It's a day's walk if you don't get stuck. Your boots are still wet from last week. You pack a bundle of withered carrots, some dried herbs, and a bit of cloth in case you need to trade. The road is emptier than you remember. Trees look less like shelter now, more like shadows. Along the way, you find a makeshift shrine. Someone's left tokens, bits of fabric, carved trinkets, even a crust of bread turned green with mold. You don't touch them, but you add a pebble to the pile. It's all you have. Maybe someone will see it and know another soul passed through. The other village is worse off. Their well dried early. Their animals were taken by a local lord as tax payment. You hear stories of a girl who tried to eat rocks. Her teeth broke before her spirit did. You barter your cloth for information and return home with a warning. Don't trust the clear skies yet. When you arrive, something has changed. The villagers have dug a pit, shallow but wide. At first, you think it's another grave, but it isn't. It's for compost, they say. The plan is to gather every scrap, peel, and husk whatever can rot and nourish. The soil must be rebuilt before anything will grow. You join in. The act feels both hopeful and absurd, like drawing maps in sand with the tide coming in. But it's something to do, something that isn't waiting. At night, you dream of green. Not just grass or leaves, but soft moss under your feet. Full cabbages cradled in your arms, vines heavy with tomatoes. You wake hungry and crying, the dream already slipping away. Your hands blister from the digging, your back aches, but you don't stop. None of you do, because work is the only thing left between you and madness. Then one day, someone finds a sprout, a real one, tiny, trembling, but undeniably green. Nobody touches it. You build a ring of stones around it like a holy relic. Children are forbidden to play near it. Adults come by and whisper nothings to it, as if willing it to grow with their breath. It might be a weed. It might be a miracle. It might be both. Either way, it's hope. And right now, that's more filling than any broth you've tasted in weeks. The morning is brighter than usual, almost deceptively so. You blink against the rare sunlight, but it offers no warmth. It spills onto the cobblestones like a spotlight, as if daring anyone to step into its glow. You don't. Not at first. You've learned that things in your world that appear pleasant warm bread, a soft word, a sunny morning usually come with a cost. Today is your father's day to die. No, not in the literal sense. Not yet. But that's how it feels. Today is the day he passes his tools down to you. The day, the name, the duty, the stare-saw of it becomes yours. He hasn't said much about it. Your father never says much at all. But for the past week, he's been quieter than usual. Slower too, not physically. It's in the way he stares at walls for too long, or forgets the names of your goats, or sharpens his blade 3 times in one night though it doesn't need it, like he's trying to hold something back and failing. You don't know what the ritual is. Not exactly. It's not written down anywhere. There's no scroll or oath or sacred chant, but there's always been a way things are done. He wakes you up before the bells, tells you to bring no food. You walk in silence, first down the muddy slope, past the empty market stalls, and then toward the edge of town toward the hanging tree. It has no name. It doesn't need one. It's the tree, the place where judgment becomes gravity, where silence becomes final. Every town has one. Some are newer, the ropes cleaner. Others are gnarled and ancient, heavy with memory. Yours is somewhere in between, but it knows your family well. You stop before reaching it, not out of reverence, because there's something waiting on the stump beside it. A bundle, wrapped in old linen, stained and tied with twine. You know what's inside before your father even touches it. The tools. The first time you saw them, you were 6. He let you hold the chisel, then just for a second. You didn't understand what it was for. You do now. He unwraps them slowly. Each item is placed on the stump like a sacrament. The rope heath, thinner one for wrists, the thicker one for throats, the cleaver, the branding iron, the hammer, the iron mask. Each piece hums with use. The leather gloves, blackened at the fingers, the hood. He lets you look at them, doesn't say a word. Then he steps back. You think you're supposed to say something. But what? Do they have names? You finally ask. Your father looks at you strangely. No, he says. They're not people. You nod. But in your mind, they do. The cleaver is mercy, because it ends things quickly. The rope is regret. The hood is shame. You touch each one, not picking them up. Not yet. Just letting your fingers learn the weight of legacy, the roughness of rope, the cold bite of steel. When you reach the mask, you hesitate. It's not designed for you to wear. It's meant for others, meant to blot out identity. But as you run your fingers over its rusted edge, you wonder if it's ever worn a face like yours. Your father watches, then finally speaks. You don't have to want this, he says. You just have to do it well. You nod, because that's the only answer there is. The training begins that day. Not with blood, not yet, but with knots, endless aching knots. Rope burns bloom on your palms, your thumbs cramp, your back screams from crouching. You learn how to tie a noose that won't slip, then one that will when asked. You learn the difference between a short drop and a long one, between a clean snap and slow suffocation. Your father shows you where to aim on the neck, not to kill-toe break. The irony? You become a student of mercy, because a bad executioner causes pain. A good one knows how to end it fast. Clean work is kind work, your father says. He says it often. And you believe him. Eventually, the first time you're allowed to swing the cleaver, it's on a pig carcass. The sound it makes is not what you expected. It's dull, wet. The echo isn't metallic. It's meat. You gag. Your father doesn't stop you, just hands you another pig and waits. You keep going. Eventually the gagging stops. You learn how to dislocate a shoulder with a single movement, how to hold someone's wrists so they don't bruise too early, how to fold a body into a cart without spilling it. You learn the tricks to make a hanging look clean even when the condemned soils themselves. You begin to understand that half of your job is theatre, that the audience, the villagers, the magistrates, even the priests need to see justice more than they need it to happen. A well-timed nod, a quiet prayer, a pause before the lever drops. It's choreography. And you're the star, no one applauds. Quirky tidbit? Some towns pay extra for theatricality. A little flair. One village asked your father to wear red gloves for ceremony. Another wanted a bell rung before the blade fell. One time, a noble woman requested a song be played as her husband was beheaded. Your father sang it himself, off-key but solemn. Historians still argue whether executioners had fixed methods across regions or whether it was all local flair and family tradition. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Each town had its customs, each family its secrets. But always there was a line, and you've just stepped over it. Your father takes you to the prison after 2 weeks. The guards don't look you in the eye. They never did with him either, but now it feels different. You are the reason they avert their gaze. You are the silence they carry. Inside, you meet a man named Felix. He stole grain during the famine, enough to feed a family, but not his, yours. You hadn't known that when you took the assignment. When you agreed to assist your father, Felix doesn't recognize you. Or maybe he does, and chooses not to say. He looks tired. He looks ready. He doesn't beg. Your father says you'll hold the rope. Not the blade, not yet, just the rope. You nod. The walk to the square is short, but it feels like forever. You can hear murmurs, see faces in windows. Children are kept indoors today. Felix walks ahead, not resisting. Your father speaks the charges. The priest mumbles a prayer. And then it's time. You steady the rope, loop it clean. No phrase. You breathe once, twice, then pull. It's over fast. Cleaner than you expected. And yet, you feel filthy. Your father nods. Good. You don't answer. Later, at the stump, he says nothing, just hands you the gloves, the stained ones. They fit. Too well. By now, you've stopped looking people in the eyes. Not because you're ashamed, though, there's still some of that, buried under your ribs like an ache that won't settle, but because you've realized that most people don't want to be seen by you. To be noticed by the executioner is, in their minds, the first step toward the gallows. So they lower their gaze, shift to the side, murmur excuses to ghosts you can't see, and you let them. It's easier than pretending. Still, it's a lonely way to live. Even the town dogs stop following you. You're more isolated than a monk, with none of the divine purpose. You still wake to the bell, still pull on the same worn tunic, still chew the same sour bread. But the village is moving on without you. Not out of cruelty, though, a few children still make cutting gestures when they think you're not looking, but because they don't know what to do with you. You were part of the punishment. And now that there's no one left to hang, your purpose hangs loose too, like a rope in the wind. It would be easier, you think, if executions were frequent. There's a grim sort of rhythm in that, at least. A horrible, predictable cadence. But months have passed since the last sentence. The jail is empty. The court is quiet. And so, you linger like a spare blade. Sharp, but unused. One day the mayor calls you in not to deliver bad news, but to offer options. It's said delicately, as if you're a guest at your own funeral. "They need your room for the new miller's apprentice," he says, "but you're welcome to stay in the outer stable, if you like." He doesn't meet your eyes when he says it. You nod. What else can you do? The apprentice is 16, eager, all elbows and teeth. You move into the stable, where the straw smells like mold and the roof leaks when it rains. But it's quiet. You hang your tools on the wall and sit with them like old friends. And for a while, that's enough. But then rumors reach you, not about thieves or bandits, those are common enough, but about the forest. Something stirring out there, something not quite animal, not quite ghost. People whisper of lights in the trees, of bones found clean in the morning, of cries in the dark that don't sound human. You think it's nonsense, but fear is a fertile thing. It spreads faster than fire, and twice as hard to put out. And so, predictably, the town needs someone brave, someone accustomed to death, someone no one would miss if it went badly. You don't say yes, you just don't say no, which is enough. They give you a donkey and a sack of dried peas. The donkey is older than sin and twice as stubborn. The peas taste like dust and regret, but they pack you off anyway, waving from behind shuttered windows. The forest is a different kind of silence. It doesn't hum like the gallows yard, doesn't echo like the court hall. It muffles. Eats sound like soup. Even the birds are quiet. Your boots sink into moss so thick it feels like walking on old bread. You keep one hand on your axe, not because you expect to use it, but because it reminds you who you are, or were, or still might be. By the second day, you haven't seen anything unusual, but you feel watched. It's not a feeling you like. You're used to being the one watching, the one judging. Out here, the trees judge you back. You come across a clearing. In the center, a stone circle knot grand, not ancient, just arranged. Fresh. Each rock sits too deliberately to be natural. You step around it, not through. There's a difference. Even you can feel that. That night, you sleep badly. Dreams of fire and bone. Someone whispers your name, but you don't recognize the voice. Morning comes slowly, like it's unsure whether it should. The donkey has wandered off. You don't bother to call it back. Instead, you find a stream and follow it. Water leads to life, or to something pretending to be alive. Midway through the day, you see it a shape. Not quite a hut, not quite a ruin. It leans into the hillside like it's hiding from something. You approach cautiously, axe ready, and knock on the wood that passes for a door. No answer. You knock again. This time, the door swings inward. Inside, it's dark and musty, but lived in. Herbs hang from the beams. A fire pit, long cold, rests in the center. A single chair sits beside a table with one bowl. You step inside and freeze. On the wall opposite, carved into the wood, is your name. Not just your name, but your full name. The one nobody uses. The one only your mother ever spoke aloud. And beneath it, another word, justice. You turn slowly, axe raised, but there's no one there. Just wind. Just the smell of something burning, faint but unmistakable. Historians still argue whether certain regions maintained unofficial forest courts, places where old customs held sway, where justice was handed out by those outside the system. Some say it was vigilantes. Others say it was witches. A few suggest it was simply fear made solid, shaped by belief. Whatever the truth, you leave the hut without touching anything. You walk faster now. Even the moss seems thinner. The air smells like iron. You return to the village 3 days later. No one expected you back. They don't ask what you saw. You don't tell them. But something's changed. Not just in you, but around you. The town seems smaller, or maybe you're just bigger, not in body, but in presence. The children stop mocking. The elders nod when you pass. Even the dogs follow again. You haven't executed anyone in months, but they still call you the executioner. And now, for the first time, you wonder if that title means more than swinging a blade. Maybe justice isn't a task. Maybe it's a shadow that walks behind you. Maybe it wears your face. Maybe it wears everyone's. You sleep with the axe beside your bed, not because you fear attack, but because you remember what the forest whispered. And you're starting to believe it. You spend the next few weeks in a haze of wood smoke and strange dreams. Something about that forest never really left you. You go about your days like nothing's changed, chopping wood, checking the ropes on the scaffold that's long since fallen into disuse, nodding politely to those who give you wide berth, but something has changed. The village knows it. You know it. And though no one says it aloud, they all step a little more carefully around you now. Your title, executioner, has always carried weight, but now it carries silence too. That deep, hollow sort of silence you remember from inside the forest. And from the faces of those you once sent to their deaths. Not everyone avoids you. The baker still sells you stale loaves for half price. The blacksmith's youngest boy waves whenever he sees you, though his mother always pulls him away by the arm like your shadow might stick to him. And once, the priest even invited you to confession. You didn't go. What would you even say? I killed them because I was told to. I did my job. They scream sometimes and I still hear it at night. No, you stay silent, safer that way. Still, the town needs you, though not always in the ways it thinks. You've become a symbol, a warning, a necessary presence, not just for executions, but for order, for balance, for fear. They know, deep down, that without someone to carry the blade, they might have to look at the blade themselves, and no one wants that. Then comes the summons. It arrives as a sealed letter, stamped with wax, borne by a rider with the king's livery, not the village's seal, not even the local barons. The king's. You haven't seen that in years, maybe ever. You open it with hands that no longer shake. The parchment smells of spice and old leather. The message is short and formal. You are summoned to the city of Goulsmont to serve at the crown's discretion in matters of justice. Travel is expected immediately, payment guaranteed, housing provided. No signature, just the seal, as if that were enough. You pack in silence, your old axe, a change of clothes, dried meat wrapped in a cloth that smells faintly of rosemary. The villagers don't say goodbye, exactly. A few nod. A few pretend not to notice. One old woman places a coin in your hand without saying a word, then shuffles off before you can give it back. You leave at dawn. Always dawn. The journey is long. Muddy paths give way to dusty roads. Crows wheel overhead, always watching. You pass hamlets smaller than yours, some burned out, some still standing. At one, a boy with hollow eyes offers you a lump of charcoal in exchange for news of the capital. You give him a slice of meat instead. Neither of you speaks. By the 7th day, the city walls rise before you, like stone teeth. Goulsmont, bigger than you imagined, bustling, loud, full of smells. You haven't missed sweat, fish, burning oil. But it's clean in a way the village never was. Ordered, polished. Men in uniforms stand at the gates and check your papers. One of them raises an eyebrow when he reads your summons. "Executioner, huh?" he mutters, handing it back like it's covered in disease. Don't envy you. Inside, a steward leads you to your new quarters. Not a cell, but not quite a home either. One room, a straw bed, a basin, a small window overlooking a yard where prisoners will someday kneel. You're given a schedule, a retainer, a robe of black trimmed in red, the official colors of death. You wear it like a shroud. Your first job arrives the next day. Not a murderer, not a traitor, a noble, a lord accused of conspiracy against the king, found guilty in a trial that everyone knew the outcome of before it began. You're told to prepare the scaffold for a clean execution. Clean is a strange word for what you do, but you nod. When the time comes, the yard is full. Nobles, clergy, even some merchants. You stand there hooded and silent, axe in hand. The Lord is brought out in chains. He spits at the crowd, shouts about lies and power and truth. You wonder if he's right. It doesn't matter. The signal is given. You raise the axe. He dies with his eyes open. Later, you clean the blade in silence. Your hands move automatically. The rhythm is familiar, comforting, almost. That night, you are summoned again, not to the scaffold but to the palace. You're led through halls of marble and gold, past statues of kings and saints. Eventually, you are brought into a room lit only by a single candle. There, a man waits. Not the king, but someone close, too close. "I've read your file," he says. "You're efficient, quiet, loyal." You don't answer. He doesn't expect you to. There's more work. Not just public executions, private ones, special ones, ones that require discretion. He lets the word hang like smoke. You'll be paid double, triple. You'll have influence and safety. There it is. Safety, the one thing no executioner truly has, because the blade you carry is sharpest when it turns. Historians still argue whether royal executioners acted as spies, assassins, or merely state tools. Records are scarce. Names vanish. Some say they were granted titles. Others, that they disappeared once no longer useful. You nod once. You take the job. What else can you do? The next weeks blur. Names come. Faces blur. You learn to strike not just on the scaffold, but in shadows, in alleys, in locked rooms where no one speaks and no one remembers. You become something more than the village feared. You become what the crown needs. And still, you are alone. Until one day, someone calls you by your real name. Not executioner. Not sir. Your name. It comes from a girl in the market, young, freckled, selling apples. You freeze. She looks up, confused. "That is you, isn't it?" she says. You nod, slowly. She doesn't flinch, doesn't run. "I remember you," she says. "From the village. You gave my brother a blanket, years ago." You remember neither her nor the blanket. She smiles. "Thank you," she says. He lived, just barely. Then she hands you an apple. Free. You take it. Later that night, you sit by your window, looking at the lights of the city. You eat the apple, slowly, thoughtfully. It's sweeter than you expected. The first time someone calls you a ghost, they don't mean it kindly. It's whispered under breath, spat like a curse behind your back in the marketplace, just loud enough for you to hear. Not a real ghost, of course, but the kind that haunts without dying. A man whose shadow walks into a room before his name is spoken. You turn slightly, your hand still resting on the wrapped bundle of firewood you meant to buy, and catch the butcher's wife eyeing you like you might peel her open and weigh her liver. Again, you sigh. Not because it surprises you by now, it doesn't, but because it means your day just got longer. You haven't done anything this week. No hangings, no beheadings, not even a public shaming. But your presence alone is enough to curdle milk and silence children. You wonder if farmers feel this way feared when the rain comes, blamed when it doesn't. Back home, the stew is thin. You eat in silence while your apprentice sharpens the blade by the hearth, drawing it over the whetstone with a rhythm as familiar as your own heartbeat. Shh, 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 shh. Outside, the village continues. Without you loud, colorful, ordinary. You sit behind a shuttered window like a character in a folk tale, half man, half warning. Once, long ago, someone asked if you ever got lonely. You told them no. That was a lie. But it's one you've learned to sit beside like an old injury. There are letters now. Not from loved ones executioners, don't have many of those, but from magistrates, lords, priests. Some are formal, inked in careful calligraphy with royal wax seals. Others are scrawled in haste, smeared with mud or wine, sometimes both. All ask the same thing: come, bring your tools. A sentence has been passed. You sort them by urgency. One is for a burning, always messy. Another is for a noble who's requested the sword over the rope. You note that down. The blade must be polished, the cut clean. Nobles like to die with their heads intact. There's one letter that's different. No crest, no formal opening, just a folded scrap of vellum, weighted with something small. When you tip it, a single finger bone rolls out onto the table. You pause. Read the note again. It says, "She walks at night. We need silence. Bring sleep." No names, no signature, just coordinates scrawled in the margins. A village at the edge of your jurisdiction. You don't sleep that night. Historians still argue whether these notes were real if executioners acted as unofficial exorcists in the late medieval period, or if it's all local myth. But something stirs deep in your gut as you saddle the mule, something that feels older than law. You arrive at dusk. The village doesn't greet you. No children peek out from behind carts. No elders wave from doorways. Just shuttered windows and doors closed with visible latches. When you ask where the magistrate is, a man points toward the chapel without speaking. Inside, the priest looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. He sees your black coat and nods once. That's all. She's buried, but they say she walks. Wailing, he murmurs. You ask, "How long?" 3 nights. Always the same hour. Always near the well. You've heard worse. You've seen worse. But something about this unsettles you. You visit the well. It's dry, stone-circled, and old enough that ivy has claimed one side. At the base lies a child's doll, bloated from the recent rain. No footsteps, no signs of tampering. But there's something, an air of held breath. You offer to dig. They say no. She was buried properly, with salt, with coins, with her favorite comb placed under her tongue to bind the spirit. Still, they say, she walks. You don't believe in ghosts, but you believe in panic. So you wait. The 4th night, she comes. Not as a wraith, But as a girl, alive, mud-caked, and shivering, she's maybe 9. Her wrists are raw from rope burns. Her feet bleed. She wasn't buried. She was hidden. It takes hours before the full story emerges. An accusation, a mark shaped like a snake's tongue, a midwife who swore she saw her speaking to crows. The village decided. The parents didn't protest. They thought it kinder than the fire. You wrap her in your cloak and say nothing. On the road back, she doesn't speak. She eats what you give her and watches your every move. Once, she smiles barely. Back home, you write one more letter, not to a lord or priest, to your friend in the next province, the one who knows how to forge papers and stories. The girl vanishes. The ghost stops walking. And no one asks again. Quirky fact. Some medieval towns recorded sightings of living ghosts. People mistakenly presumed dead and then ostracized forever if found alive again. You return to your duties, the rope, the blade, the torch, but something has shifted. The next time someone is condemned for witchcraft, you ask more questions. You check for birthmarks. You test their responses. You delay. Sometimes it's enough. Other times it's not. But you try, which is more than most. One winter, your apprentice falls ill, coughs blood, shivers under blankets too thin for the frost. You sit beside him at night, blade untouched, work unattended. You feed him broth made from your own stores. Whisper useless encouragements. He survives, just barely. Afterward, he looks at you differently, not just as a master, but as something closer to human. It's not much, but you take it. Some days later, a cart arrives from the capital. A fresh decree from the king. New protocols for execution, more decorum, less spectacle. You skim it, then toss it into the fire. Because no matter what they decree from towers of stone, out here, in the dirt and cold, you still decide when the axe falls. And when it doesn't, the snow that year comes late, not in soft, festive flakes like the ballads sing about, but in sudden, horizontal sheets that coat the world in suffocating white. It turns mud into armor, roofs into brittle bones, and footsteps into secrets lost too easily. You wake up coughing ash from the hearth and wonder, for the first time in years, what you'd do if your hands gave out, if your back bent too far to rise, if your knees one day said no and meant it. Executioners don't retire, they vanish. You shift beneath the threadbare blanket and listen to your apprentice struggle to stoke the fire with frozen twigs. You don't help, not because you can't, but because he needs to learn what winter means here. It means fingers that crack open like overripe plums. It means bread so hard you need a blade to cut it. It means choosing which tools not to bury in the snow and which you'll never see again. When you do finally rise, your first job is not death. It's barter. 2 chickens and a sack of onions for a half sack of charcoal. You ride to the village on the edge of the marsh, where they claim the old charcoal burner still lives. You find him in a hut, wrapped in blankets, blinking like a mole in the smoke. His beard is grey moss, his voice mostly phlegm. He doesn't want chickens, he wants stories. So you tell him one, not of executions, but of the girl who lived, the one you pulled from the well, how she looked more ghost than flesh, and how she never once wept. He listens, nods, then pushes the sack toward you. "That's worth more than chickens," he mutters. You return home with the charcoal and a fire already inside you. Historians still argue whether executioners often formed back-channel alliances with marginalized villager-souled burners, hedge witches, madmen. But you know this, when no one wants to speak to you, those with nothing left to lose will, and sometimes they're the only ones who'll tell the truth. That winter, truth becomes harder to find. Your next summons is not from the court, but the cathedral. It's rare. Executioners are not invited to churches, let alone summoned by them. The bishop's man is polite but cold. There is a problem, he says. We need a demonstration. You almost laugh. You don't do performances. But then he adds, it's for the seminary. Novices need to understand the wages of sin. And so you go. The hall is grand, gold-leafed and echoing, filled with boys barely out of childhood, all in clean robes and polished shoes. They smell like oil and incense. None have seen a man die. You bring your tools. You do not dress them up. You do not coat the axe in ritual. You simply explain. This cuts here, you say, tapping the nape of your neck. If done wrong, the man screams until his lungs deflate. Silence. One boy vomits, another passes out, a third stands rigid, blinking fast, jaw clenched like stone. You leave without fanfare. On the way out, the bishop nods. A necessary horror, he says. You don't answer. Later, you dream of the boy who did not flinch, of his jaw, of how tightly he held his hands. When spring begins to crack the ice, a strange invitation arrives. A fair, not a noble affair, but a muddy market town one, where bear-baiting and puppet plays coexist with pickpockets and cider. They want an execution, a staged one, for drama, entertainment. You burn the letter, then you write your own. To the guild of butchers and jesters, you begin, I do not deal in fiction. No one replies. But weeks later, you hear of another man who took the job, not an executioner, a soldier with a borrowed axe. The cut went bad. The crowd rioted. The fair was cancelled for a decade. You don't gloat. But you don't grieve, either. By midsummer, your apprentice comes of age. He stands before you, a boy no longer, his hands calloused, his eyes heavier than they once were. He doesn't ask to leave, he asks to stay. You give him a blade. Not yours, a smaller one, forged from scraps of discarded iron, honed sharp enough to shave. He names it Quiet. That same week, an old debt returns. A family you once spared, long ago, when the mother was accused of heresy for keeping a black book. They send you honeyed bread and a sealed note. He speaks now, and he asks to meet the man who gave him a second childhood. You ride there in the dusk. The boy now, a teenager, runs to greet you, holding a carved horse you once traded him for silence. He doesn't remember the worst of it, only that your eyes didn't look away. Are you the monster? He asks, smiling. Yes, you say, but only in winter. He laughs. You stay for supper. Quirky tidbit. In a few small medieval towns, children were taught to fear a local masked figure called the Winter Man, often inspired by the real executioner who would supposedly steal naughty children. You once wore that mask. Now it sits forgotten in a box. Back home, your apprentice tells you he saw someone lurking by the old gallows. You investigate. It's a thief, not a clever one, desperate, cold, starving. You don't hang him. You give him soup and send him to the charcoal burner. Another mask removed. Another ghost released. The moment you hear the wind singing through the trees high, reedy, and thin as bone you know someone's going to die. The wind always sings before death, not the crisp gust of storm or the low howl of winter, no. This is the death wind. It curls around corners and slips beneath doors. You've only heard it 3 times in your life. Once before your mother passed in the spring of your 10th year, once before the child was found in the river, and now, again. It begins the night you're summoned again, not by the constable, nor the bishop, but by a delegation of cloaked men who knock at your gate like polite thunder. "We need your presence," one says. "You need the axe," you reply. "No," the second says, "we need the mask." You haven't worn the mask in over a decade, not since the riots, not since the heretic trials that burned more scrolls than souls. You keep it buried beneath floorboards. Leather, dried and curling at the edges, painted with flaking ash white and soot. It isn't just a symbol, it's a persona. When you wear it, you're no longer a man, you're judgment incarnate. This time, the request is ceremonial. A noble has died, and per tradition, his bastard son must be symbolically severed from inheritance by a mock execution. No blades, no blood, just a show. You ask, is he a child? No, they say. He's a man, a loud one. Of course he is. The pageantry is held at twilight, on a scaffold dressed with banners and velvet. The crowd murmurs with excitement, and the illegitimate heir sneers at the stage. You ascend the steps slowly, masked, silent, and robed. You stand behind him and raise your hand. There is no axe, only air. But he flinches, and the crowd roars. Later, you hear he left the country within the month. Historians still argue whether such rituals actually reduced political tensions or merely humiliated rivals into exile. But you know this: fear, even symbolic, reshapes destiny. Your apprentice watches the whole thing, doesn't say a word on the ride home, but that night he sharpens every tool you own, even the ones for show. A week later, an old man dies in your village. Natural causes, no inquest, no suspicion. He had no enemies, no crimes, but no family either. You offer to bury him. Nobody protests. You dig the grave alone, in silence. When the shovel hits stone, you shift it carefully, not wanting to disturb the dreams of the sleeping earth. The man had a cane, a crooked jaw, and once told you he had been a scholar. That's all you know. Still, when you lower him down, you speak a prayer, not one from the church. One you learned long ago from a charcoal burner, whispered into cold pine smoke. May the earth forget your pain but remember your bones. You don't cry, but the wind sighs like it knows your voice. After that, the village begins to change again, slowly, not in revolutions, but in small mercies. The butcher offers you the freshest scraps. The tailor sews you a new tunic. Children start to wave some nervously, some boldly. Even the priest, though still stiff, blesses your doorstep on Holy Day, not because they forget, but because they remember too well, and in the remembering, find space for gratitude. Quirky detail. You begin to keep bees. Not many, just 3 hives in the back corner of your garden. At first, the buzzing feels invasive, like judgment, but then it softens. You talk to them, like you once talked to condemned men. Quiet, honest, without masks. One morning, your apprentice asks if you'll let him take his first solo job. It's a robbery case, no blood, just sentencing. You hesitate. But you nod. He takes quiet, not the big axe, rides out before dawn. You wait all day. And when he returns, he doesn't speak, just places quiet on the table. I gave him a choice, he says. He chose penance, the magistrate agreed. You nod. You say nothing more, because you're proud and terrified and exhausted. That night, you find a small packet of herbs tucked under your pillow. It's an old tradition warding off nightmares. You don't know who left it, but you sleep better. Until the dream comes, you're in the square again. Not the present one, but the one from your youth. Muddy, packed, restless. The crowd jeers. The condemned weeps. You raise the axe. But then the condemned looks up. And it's you. Not metaphorically. Your face, your eyes, your breath fogging the rope. You wake before the swing. Historians still argue whether executioners suffered long-term trauma or viewed their work as detached ritual, but you know the answer, both. The next day, you take your apprentice to the lake. Not for death. For fishing, the first fish takes an hour. The second, a moment. The third never comes. But the sun does. And the mask stays buried. There's something about the apple that stays with you. Maybe it's the unexpected sweetness. Maybe it's the memory that came with it. Maybe it's the fact that someone after all this time recognized you not by your hood or your axe, but by a moment of kindness you barely remember. A ripple in the long, dark pond of your life that somehow reached the shore. The next day, you walk through the city without your hood. Just once. Heads turn, eyes widen, whispers stir. You expect panic, disgust, fear, but mostly there is confusion, and then recognition. Not of you, but of what you mean. Some nod. Some pretend not to see you. A few mothers pull their children closer. But no one stops you. No one throws stones. You return to your quarters, unsure if what you've done was brave or foolish. That night, the steward knocks. There's a situation, he says. They want you in the chambers. The chambers, not the scaffold, not the alley, not the palace. The chambers are where decisions are made, where the powerful whisper and shadows stretch long. You go. The room is small, thick with candle smoke and murmured voices. 3 men sit at the table. 1 woman stands behind them with her hands folded tight. They tell you there's unrest, a noble family plotting descent, a group of scholars spreading dangerous texts, a monk who dares to speak of justice. Do you want me to kill them? You ask, the words flat as slate. One of the men shakes his head. Not yet, he says. We want you to watch. And just like that, your role changes again. You become the eye behind the veil, the ear in the tavern. You attend lectures under a false name. You nod along to sermons. You dine with men who toast the king and then whisper rebellion between courses. You write nothing down. Your memory sharpens like the edge of your blade once did. And still, you walk the city each morning, past the same stalls, past the same girl with the apples. She always has one waiting for you now. No charge. Do they still fear you? She asks once. You shrug. Some do. Should they? You think about it, about the man you were, the village, the scaffold, the forest, the king, the orders, the silence. I don't know, you say. And you mean it? You dream more often now. Vivid dreams, the kind that press on your ribs when you wake up. In one, you're back in the village, but it's not famine season. The fields are golden green, Children run laughing through the rows. The church bell rings, and no one looks at you with fear. You wake with tears in your eyes. One morning, a paper is slipped under your door. No seal, no name, just a line. When does the sword turn inward? You burn it without thinking. But the question sticks. You keep working, keep listening, keep reporting. But something in you begins to shift. You start noticing the small things again, the way old men feed birds crumbs from their palms, the way young women braid each other's hair on the cathedral steps, the way children dare each other to sneak past the guards and ring the bell before sprinting away. You remember what it's like to feel joy by proximity. And then the king dies. Sudden, rumored to be poisoned, or perhaps just old age, no one agrees. A new ruler rises his son, young, unproven. He cleans house fast, advisors vanish, policies change, your summons slow. One day, you receive a letter with no seal. Your service is no longer required. You are free to go. Keep your stipend. Say nothing. No signature, just silence. You stand there for a long time, letter in hand. What now? No one tells you what to do when the job ends, when the blade dulls, when the silence becomes unbearable, not because of fear but because no one is listening anymore. You walk, not to the palace, not to the tavern, but to the edge of the city, to the wall where ivy climbs high and the air smells of pine beyond the stone. You keep walking. Days pass. You return to the forest. Not the same one, but close enough. The trees are older. You are too. You build a small hut with your hands. You learn to fish again. You speak only to the birds. You hang your robe on a branch and let the wind take it over time. Sometimes villagers come, lost, hungry. You feed them, offer directions. They never ask your name. You never give it. And then one day, a boy arrives, freckled, green-eyed, holding a woodcutter's axe that's too big for his hands. "I'm looking for the executioner," he says. You look at him. He's shaking. "I was told he might help me. I think I did something bad." You don't ask what. Instead, you put another log on the fire. "Sit," you say. And he does. You pass him a bowl of broth, hot, simple, honest. And as he eats, you finally speak the words that have sat inside you like stones for years. "You're not what you did." He looks up, confused, hopeful. And just like that, the blade in your chestnut, the one you carried, but the one you were grows dull. You exhale, and the wind carries it away. You rest your hands beside the fire, feeling the warmth of something that isn't duty or fear but peace. Out here, in the stillness of the trees, there's no scaffold, no whispers, no rope, just the crackle of flame and the soft murmur of wind through branches. You let your thoughts loosen, unraveling the threads that once bound your name to shadows. And maybe, just maybe, this is what freedom feels like. Not grand, not loud, but quiet, like a breath you didn't know you were holding finally let go. Your body, worn and marked by years of watching, listening, doing what had to be done, can finally soften. The boy by the fire finishes his broth. He smiles. You smile back. And in that small exchange, something shifts in the world. A kindness returned. A cycle broken. Tomorrow, you'll teach him to chop wood, maybe how to spot edible plants, maybe how to sit still and let the forest speak. But tonight, It's enough to share the silence with someone who doesn't flinch at your presence. Let the world keep spinning. Let kingdoms rise and fall. Here, you've stepped out of history's grip. Sleep now. Let the flickering light of the fire lull your thoughts. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the trees. You've survived more than most ever will. And, for once, there's no axe waiting, no name to answer to. Only quiet, only peace. Sweet dreams.